Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. Well, today it is time for the full in-depth review of a watch that I was very excited about buying, but I was also slightly nervous about buying. It is the RMALTI RM001. This one here I bought from Aliexpress. If you happen to like this watch after watching this review, well, I will leave one of those affiliate links down below. But why was I so excited about buying this particular watch? Well, there was two particular reasons. Firstly, this one contains the new Seiko NH34 GMT movement, a movement that has really excited me, a movement that I've wanted to own. So now I have a watch with that Seiko GMT movement. Secondly, this watch is also a homage of one of my favourite watches, or at least it's a homage of a watch brand that I particularly love. So the sizing and the look and the kind of feel about it is homaging a brand that I particularly love. But I was a little bit nervous because this watch cost more than I'd ever spent on Aliexpress. And I try not to spend too much money on Aliexpress because once you get to a certain sort of price level, I then start to look away and looking at other brands, look at microbrands, looking at mainstream brands. So to buy a watch from Aliexpress for 415 Australian dollars, well, that made me a little bit nervous. I wasn't too nervous about the quality of the watch. I got the feeling that it would be good quality because there's been lots of good reviews about these RMALTI watches, and I also sort of know what sort of watches you get for your money on AliExpress. But still, that's a lot of money for me to spend on a watch from AliExpress. So what did it end up being like? Well, that's what this review is all about. Now, if you watch the first impressions video of this particular one, you will know that I had a little bit of an issue. There is a scratch on the hour hand of this particular watch. And if you want to see how that ended out, how I ended up fixing that, how I sort of went through the process of trying to get that resolved through the guys that I bought it from on AliExpress, well, stick around to the end of the video. This time I'm going to be flipping around, I'm going to be talking about the watch. I'm not really going to talk too much about that scratch, but I will mention it at the end of the video. And guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, can you please click on that subscribe button? It's quick, it's easy, and it's fun for you guys to do. Well, at least it's fun and easy for me, for you guys to do that, but it really makes a big difference to me and the channel. So I really would appreciate it if you chose to do that little click on that button. But let's flip it around and let's check out this RMALTI RM001 in a full in-depth review. But stick around. Find out how I ended up resolving the issue that I came across in regards to this particular watch. But let's check out the watch. So on paper, there's quite a few things to like about this watch. Comes with a nice linen dial, comes with a Seiko GMT, has BGW9 lume, 100 meters of water resistance, even comes with a signed warranty card there, comes in a nice box, and it's a good looking watch. But let's check it out in a little bit more detail, shall we? The first thing that really does stand out about this watch and that it keeps me coming back to looking at it is that dial. I'm going to try and capture it the best that I can, but it is a really nice grey colour, and I do love that grey colour, but it also is a linen dial and it's done really well. I'm really impressed. I know some of these sort of 3D dials that have some sort of texture on them, sometimes to me, from a distance they look good, but up close they look a little bit like a piece of moulded plastic. This does not. This actually looks like a piece of linen. Obviously it's not, but it certainly looks like that. Now we've got nice applied indices and the nice hands, they're all polished and they all have some nice lume in them as well. Whilst we're talking about the lume, let's throw in a bit of a lume shot because it is actually pretty good. I'm actually really impressed. I guess paying this little bit extra money for a watch on AliExpress, I do expect a few things extra, and the lume certainly is not disappointing. Now, apart from the scratch, which I have mentioned earlier on the hour hand, which is not an obvious scratch, apart from that, when you don't sort of see that or when it doesn't show up, they're actually really cool looking hands. As I mentioned, all polished, has a little bit of a sort of a separation to them where that lume is, but also out on the tip of that hour hand, which I like. Obviously, we've got a GMT hand. This is the Seiko GMT movement, and I've got it in the light blue. And I really like this blue and grey. I think it's a lovely combination of colours. Also on that dial, we've got the RMALTI logo. Now the name's a little bit interesting, but I actually think it looks okay on the dial. It's applied, it's sort of polished. To me, it actually reminds me a little bit of the Seiko logo if you don't actually read it and you just glance at it. But we've also got a matching sort of surround date frame there in polished stainless steel as well. Not color matched, only white, but it looks okay. I'm perfectly okay with that. The rest of the things that are on the dial are printed, automatic in white and GMT in blue. The blue to match that GMT hand as well. There's an inner bezel there, which you can look under there. It's got the sort of dots at the hours, and there's sort of a minute track as well. Now covering that dial we have a flat piece of sapphire crystal, and I'm pretty sure there's some AR coating because when you hit it with the light you can still see through it really well. And you can see that crystal is really nice as well, has a little bit of a bevel edge there coming up from that sort of solid bezel. That solid bezel is really cool as well, so that's really nice. It's solid, you don't move it, but it has these numbers written around it in black, and they are actually sort of inset into the bezel as well, so there's a bit of a 3D effect to them. The bezel is also brushed, and then it transitions down to a really nice polish as well, which is a really nice transition in textures there. Now, if you're not interested in this sort of grey linen version with this blue hand, there are some different options available. Obviously, this being the grey linen with the blue GMT hand, but you can also get the same grey linen with a GMT hand in red. Some people may prefer that, it does stand out a little bit more, but I do like the grey and blue together. If you don't like the grey linen version, you can also get a grey sunburst, and you can get that grey sunburst in both the red GMT hand, and of course you can also then get that grey sunburst with the same blue hand that this one has, so the grey and blue with the sunburst dial. However, if you don't want the grey at all, if this watch also comes in blue, there's a blue sunburst, again with the blue GMT hand, and of course as well there is the blue sunburst with the red GMT hand. So there's a few different options there for you depending on what sort of colour combinations you want and what sort of dial you would like on this watch. But no matter which one you choose, you get the same dimensions with all of them, and that's a really nice set of dimensions. The case here is 40 millimeters. The width of the watch is 12.5 millimeters. The lug to lug is 47.4 millimeters, but we do have male end links. Now they do sort of curve down a fair bit, so they really don't really affect the wearing of this watch too much, but it does push it back out to 51.8 millimeters. It has a lug width of 22 millimeters, and on this supplied bracelet set to my 6 3/4 inch wrist, we're looking at 151 grams. Now, a real standout feature of this watch is how well it's finished and the differences in finishings that it uses. As I mentioned, there's a brushing on the top of that stainless steel solid bezel, but then there's a nice brushing on the side, and it's really reflective there. You can actually almost see me waving. Yes, you can. Transitions on some brushing onto the top of those lugs, a sort of a chamfered polished edge there into a nice brushing on the case profile. And just check out that case profile while we're there, because it's really nice. You can even see there's almost a slight undercut to it. It's quite nice. Drilled end lugs, which some people do really enjoy. I guess it makes it easy to transition out to different bracelets or different straps. Unguarded crown, as you can see there, it is signed. Now that logo doesn't seem to really appear anywhere else on the watch, but I guess that's the RMALTI logo, but it does look really nice and sort of sits very flush onto that sort of case there. Now it does come with a screw down crown, giving this watch 100 meters of water resistance. So when you unscrew it, it pops out to the first position where you have hand winding, which is a very nice feature to have. There's also hacking on this watch, but when you go to the second position, if you turn one way, you can see you've got the quick set of the date, and if you turn the other way, you got the quick set of that GMT hand. Now pulling out to the last position, it does hack the movement. Then as you turn those hands, it also then slaves that GMT hand to it. So you can adjust it either way, but once you've actually set that GMT hand to where you want compared to where the hour and the minute hands are, you can then transition by just using the movement of the hour and the minute hand. Now, when you flip the watch over, you'll actually see that NH34 movement. It's not the most attractive movement in the world, but it is actually kind of nice to be able to see it. It is a little bit more complex than the standard sort of NH movement, so it is nice to be able to see in there. But it's always nice to see what these movements are like and how they are performing. So let's stick this Seiko NH34 on the time grapher. We'll have to admit that's a little bit disappointing. We've got the lift angle set properly this time. I do sometimes forget to change that for this watch, but you can see it's vibrating at 21,600 vibrations per hour. A little bit disappointing because the beat error is actually quite high. That's much higher than what I would like to see. Generally below 1 is good, 0 is even better. Saying that, the amplitude is really good and sitting around about -5 to -8 seconds, and that's not too bad. Just a little bit of a shame about that beat error. That can sometimes be caused by the watch being knocked a little bit. This is a fairly much brand new watch that hasn't been worn too much. I certainly haven't knocked it in the time that I've had it, so it's a little bit disappointing to see that that's not a little bit better. Now the watch comes on actually a really nice bracelet. I really do like it. It has nice solid end lugs that fit very well. A mixture of surfaces. You can see some brushing, a little bit of polishing down the sort of center of those, a little bit of polishing on the sides. We've got screw links, which is really good, and a really nice clasp. It's probably one of my sort of more favorite clasps. Sort of not too big, not too small, just nice, double pushes. It's got the logo written across there with a nice little chamfered edge there, polished, and a milled inner, which is what we're expecting now out of sort of these sort of prices, especially this price for this particular watch. And again, we're looking at that see-through case pack, which is nice to see. And how does it look on wrist? Well, it looks exactly what I expected from a watch with these sort of dimensions. It looks great. Really, this is probably one of my favorite sizes of watches. Even those male end links, you can see they sort of curve down and sort of suit my wrist nicely. Really sits well, really looks good. Really enjoy this sort of size, this style, and this weight. There's a reason why I picked this one, because of what it is homaging, those style of watches, those watches that I really love. But this one is really nice. I've really actually been enjoying wearing it, even though it has been a little bit disappointing with that scratch on the hour hand. Now that I've been wearing it longer term, I'm sort of looking past that and just seeing the watch for what it is and really enjoying it. But what do I like about it? What don't I like about it? And what would I change? Well, the thing that I like most about it is that dial. It is stunning. That sort of linen dial, a really, really nice look to it. And obviously, besides that tiny little scratch, which is a tiny little bit disappointing, but I think it's even hard to catch in photography. So I'm not even going to be sure if I'm going to be able to show you guys what that scratch is. But besides that, I really like the hands, how they look, how they're placed, indices, everything about what's on the dial looks great. The K shape is beautiful. I really like that. And all the sort of polishing and the brushing is really done really well. I like having the GMT movement. Now the beat error is a little bit higher than I would like, but it is what it is. It doesn't really change the sort of feel of this watch on wrist. And that is the next thing that I really like out of it, is actually how it sits on wrist. A really nice wrist presence, nice feel, nice weight, nice size. But what don't I like about it? Well, I don't like the QSC issue. Obviously, a watch at this sort of price, especially from Aliexpress, it's one of the most expensive watches from Aliexpress that I've bought. Having a scratch, having a QC issue, well, not ideal. The name also, I don't dislike it, but it's probably not my favorite name that I've seen on Aliexpress. RMALTI just looks like a bunch of letters stuck together, which is a little bit odd, but realistically, you don't sort of focus on it too much. What would I change about this watch? Well, there's only a couple of things really. Firstly, obviously those QC issues I would have rectified. I would probably change the name, make it just a little bit sort of, I don't know, more a name rather than a bunch of letters together. And it'd be nice to have that color match sort of date wheel done. That would really look quite good. For me personally, a watch like this also doesn't really need drilled end lugs. It is an easy thing to have, so when you can swap and change things, but personally, it's not really for me. It doesn't bother me too much, but if I had the choice, I'd probably go without the drilled end lugs. But let's flip the camera back around to me now, and let me talk you through sort of what the issues were with this watch when there's QC issues, and I'll tell you about how I had that rectified. So let's flip back and let's check that out. So after first receiving this watch and hitting that little road bump, that little bump in the road of seeing a scratch on the hour hand, a scratch that kind of put me off the whole experience of this watch, I sort of eventually got over that and I started to really enjoy this watch. It is a really well made watch, it is a very good looking watch, and it really sits nicely on wrist. It's a watch that I've really been enjoying wearing. However, I have tried to have that issue of that scratched hour hand resolved. I contacted the store that I bought this watch from, and I said, hey, look at this, there is a scratch on this hour hand. I sent them a couple of photos. They then asked for a video. I sent a quick video showing it. And I admit, it's not a huge thing. It's not something you see every single time you look at this watch. But once you see it in the right sort of light, when it sort of catches the light a certain way, it does then stand out. They came back to me saying, hey, we'll send you some brand new hands. And I thought, fantastic, brand new hands. But how am I going to put them on the watch? I don't have the skills or the tools to do so, and they weren't offering me any money to take it to a watchmaker. So I went back to them with exactly that. Hey, that's fantastic, thank you so much, but could you perhaps send some money possibly to cover the cost of a watchmaker to do this? Or even to send me some tools and I'll give it a go myself. I wasn't particularly keen to give it a go myself on this particular watch. I haven't done this sort of stuff yet. I plan to do stuff like that, but this is one of the most expensive watches I've bought off Aliexpress, and it wasn't the first watch I was going to start hacking about with. But they didn't get back to me. I went forward again with them saying, hey guys, let's get this resolved. They came back with their hands again. I'm not sure if there was a little bit of a miscommunication because they didn't seem to be understanding that I don't have the tools to do it, and they weren't sort of offering money to get it done. So I ended up making a bit of a complaint through the application, the AliExpress application, and instantly they came back with a partial refund. I got about 15% back, which doesn't fix the problem, but it does mean the watch didn't cost me quite as much money. So I'm okay with the result. I'm not happy with the result. I've still got a watch that has scratched hands or a scratched hand, so it's not a perfect outcome, but at least I haven't spent that much money on it. Still a bit of money, still not cheap, so I'm not overly happy, but at least I got an outcome. So look into that as much as you want to and see whether you think it's an okay outcome or not. I'm a bit on the fence. Realistically, I don't actually see that scratch too often. It's just in that certain sort of light, especially when I'm outdoors and I'm staring at this watch. The problem is I do stare at this watch a bit because that dial is particularly nice. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I really do hope to see you in the next video.